What this is about is really kind of about starting some conversations and hopefully it be useful moving forwards later on in the day to kind of continue that. So this is a bit of an open session. We have got some kind of prerequisite questions that we've spoken to, some of our sales team, some of you guys, and some of the vendors themselves to really kind of get a good complete story around this kind of AI and sustainability piece. So the first thing, I do have to make sure that I've got all my questions remembered, don't worry. The first one I want to ask is, guess an open question to you all, so please feel free to kind of jump in. And is a bit of a big one to start off with, but it's essentially what are the biggest challenges that you guys have seen with traditional enterprise customers trying to begin their AI journey. So if there's anyone who necessarily want to step in on that one first.
Yeah, I mean, I'd make
Perfect,
a point on
thank
that.
you.
First of all, so I think one of the most common challenges that we see with customers beginning this journey is obviously you have all these great opportunities, lots of organizations begin to understand and can see how AI can have real benefit in their business. And you have finite resource, maybe within your organization, to start building that and delivering these types of models and these types of solutions. But it's how do you build a foundation on that? How do you enable your developer resources and the skill sets that you have within your business to focus around having the greatest IP and the greatest return? And not reinventing the wheel in terms of going back and building systems necessary from scratch, where there may be little or no value in those developers doing that. So I think one of the common things we see is customers say, well, what are the foundation, the accelerated tools, the frameworks? How can we shortcut our way to try and enable our developers within our businesses, to enable this often at times, let's be honest, quite expensive resource that we have within our organization to maximize their return and focus on how can they customize and deliver tools that reflect our particular need. So what are the foundations, the tool sets that we can build upon to accelerate that?
Perfect. So they might be interested in the infinite monkey cage, not the infinite money pit,
Exactly.
as one.
If I can add to this, what colleague said, I joined this Exacta advisory after working for 20 years in financial industry. I was at the management boards of some biggest regional banks, and our mouths were full of AI buzzwords and marketing. So we were just talking AI here, AI there, but in reality, maybe 5% of these initiatives and pilot project succeeded. So from the first hand, from industry, I know that we all like to brag around how we are good in AI. For example, this NLB group is the biggest bank in the Adriatic region, not big as Lloyd banks and etc., but in our region, the biggest. And we basically in 7 years never managed to implement one smart AI use case. But if you are reading LinkedIn publications, we were the biggest, the top AI bank in the region, etc. So there is the principle 10, 20, 70%. 10% you invest to this AI modeling, 20% you are investing to infrastructure, hardware, clouds, and 70% is people and processes. And we are all falling down to this trap. We are just jumping directly to some smart pilots which never landed, and forgetting that it is all about people, processes, like in old good times when we weren't so dependent on generative AI.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and it's a really good point. One of the other extensions from NVIDIA's perspective as well is coming back to the point. We built out workloads, accelerated workloads and catalogs to enable developers and tool sets like on NIMS technology, for instance, but these technologies to help accelerate teams. But you're entirely right. Utilization, management, scheduling of those workloads is crucial, because it's not just a case of throwing physical GPU resource at this. This is a case of, as you just said yourself, picking workloads smartly, often testing lots of workloads, finding workloads that are optimal, that suit what your audiences internally and externally need, and iterating those very quickly. And to do that, you've got to have granularity of control and management as well. And that's that's a big part. Lots of customers will maybe throw resource at something when actually it's a case of let's be more analytical and more smarter with what you're doing with the resource you have today and how you're prioritizing that.
Indeed. I think actually I spoke at AI Summit in depth about picking the right vertical to go down within your organization. And I think a lot of the time we see these really nebulous ideas of, oh my God, AI can change the way the whole company works. And oftentimes it's the boring things that actually are the most successful and the easiest to have an outcome. Ben, me and your colleague actually spoke about making sure that the outcome is going to obviously be more than the input, so making sure that you as a business can see a value out of that AI other than just we're deploying AI kind of thing, right?
Absolutely, I agree with both what Goran and Richard said. I think one of the key things with that, once you've identified that key workload, and the challenges we see is people deploying inference at scale. So whilst training is sort of a maybe one-off exercise with very high compute, how do you deploy that inference at scale? And that goes, again, it's depending on the application, whether that's from the cloud to the edge, even down to the devices. And the sort of approach we're taking there is sort of democratizing that access to AI. So whether it's AI PCs in laptops through to Xeon 6 processors in the edge servers to provide that scalability. And similar to what Richard said, a sort of software approach that enables people to develop and then deploy that workload where they need. So if you have examples like video summarization, we have customers in retail where if you're wanting to look at a video content real time, maybe it's a self-checkout, we all have used self-checkouts, you've got the cameras on them wanting to detect objects, maybe that's a good application of a video summarization task. You want to do at the edge or close to the edge on a server or even on the device. But if you want to look at where people have an issue, we've all stood at a self-checkout and been frustrated maybe with not being able to get something to scan or something. Maybe you send all those clips to more of a cloud infrastructure across your different sites and look at the commonalities. So I think it's sort of right deployment for the right KPIs.
Exactly. I think this is perfect because it's just what I spoke about this morning, which is, this isn't necessarily new trodden ground for these organizations. I mean, we've literally just heard of 3 or 4 different areas of which people have got this kind of experience and have done this before. So it's sort of, you're not necessarily, although what you might be trying to do specifically within yourself is unique, the way in which you're utilizing that technology might not necessarily be that unique, and there will be similar challenges between all of these various different areas, and we can kind of learn from that. So
can I just add to that, forgive me as well, I think the other key point as well is that as you scale and you deploy and you deliver these solutions out, one of the other parts that organizations go through is we now have to support this. So, that point around we've built these solutions ourselves internally. Well, are these certified secure, goes back to that foundation part, are these certified secure frameworks that you've built upon, okay? Are these frameworks that are going to continue to grow and develop, okay, and get more efficient as time goes on? But equally as well, who is supporting you and your organization as well on that? You've deployed this AI platform, you've deployed this AI solution across your organization, you've developed your IP on it, but who's going to help you support that in operation? Because that's another key point, I think, to organizations go to when they go to scale.
Yeah. Josh, may I take the opportunity here? So the previous presenter, the other Robin, way more interesting than me, by the way, he was talking about the window we looked through it. And the window we looked through it, hearing your responses, is very technical, because that's our core business. The way we look at it, to a certain extent as well, where we're trying to help enterprise, because your question was, what challenges are the enterprises facing in the AI? I think we need to step back a little bit first about, what does AI do for your company? Because if you're an enterprise in this audience, you've got a core business to run. Your core business is probably not running our kit or our technology or whatever. You are either in a competitive mode with some of your competitors where you want to be better, more successful. You might be having a cost structure issue. You want to be more productive, more cost efficient or whatever. So the first question is, what challenges do enterprises have when they talk to me is, what the heck do I should do with AI? Where does it start? Does it help my business? And many enterprises don't have really a clue where it can help them. They start playing a little bit with ChatGPT, Copilot, whatever they have, question answering, prompting kind of things, making their quotes better. That's all good. But it will get to the next phase very soon, to the area where we play more role when we talk about deployments, workloads. The key thing for us at Supermicro was always, the name of the game was a little bit fast time to market. There's an urge from the industry to get the technology to do these kind of AI things. So whenever there was a new technology from either Intel, NVIDIA, AMD, or strategic partners, the day they launched it, we had it available. And through Boston, you provide it to all your customers. That's not that important anymore. It sounds weird, it is, because the industry is still hungry to get that power, to get the latest and greatest, but it's all about time to deployment. Because these AI solutions, they cost hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. So from a board discussion, the AI challenge is, how do I get my ROI in place? I'm not going to wait another year for a project to do a proof of concept and everything. No, I want to be online within a month, because then the ticker starts to count. So the role for Supermicro is about changing the deployments. Can you do an off-the-shelf AI solution? Yes, you can. That's something on the enterprise we hear. Can you help me shorten that time? So it's not time to market, it's time to online more than anything ever before.
Sorry to take the word again, but you give me the great starting point, because why we are sitting here today in this great company, NVIDIA, AMD, Castrol, Intel, not to forget Supermicro, with Boston Limited and then Exacta Group, we did this vertical integration exactly as you explained it, from consulting part through the servers equipped with Supermicro motherboards, AMD Intel processors, NVIDIA graphic cards, Castrol liquid cooling solution, yeah. And we have built on-premise AI server, AI solution, which is not so expensive as you mentioned before, which is really for each packet. And on that solution, we have installed our AI solution, which is like plug-and-play solution for each company. You just bring it to your company, put down all your knowledge, your documents, connected to ERP systems. We have developed more than 20 integrations with all the ERPs, like Navision, like everything. And then you don't need even to know what are your smart use cases. You just plug it and play and use it. Ask questions, and we have developed also draftings like create me business strategy, create me IT strategy from whatever I have on this system. So guys, thank you for your contributions. On top of it, with our consulting knowledge, we have in a way make the life easier also for the consultants, because now we are not selling our knowledge, we are selling our AI-powered knowledge. And this is not buzzword, because it already works in some companies. We have some proof of concepts, and it really works like as I explained, with all of your components and our AI solution. So it is future pioneer solution with Boston Limited. Thanks to them, of course, for making all of us together.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Can I also jump in?
Yeah, of course you can.
I want to speak. I
was literally just about to come to a question.
I'm sitting up here in silence. First of all, can I just take a moment to say thank you to the Boston team. You've pulled together this event. I'm sure it's going to be a great event. So you can't guarantee the weather, but thank you. From AMD, from us, we accept the challenges with introducing AI into an organization. People are often looking at the performance versus efficiency. AI is incredibly compute intensive. It uses a lot of processing power. So people want to maximize the performance that they achieve, the maximum performance per watt. You don't want to implement a system that's going to tie you into, unsustainable, operating expenditure for years to come. So there's a real balance to be had of what so you must design a system from day one that is going to be the most efficient system, so you can take it forward into future years.
Yeah, indeed, and I think that very much nicely kind of brings me on to my first question, actually. I'm going to mix these up a bit as we kind of go through. So essentially to Castrol, we literally just talked about, the hard requirement that
Yes.
we've all seen across the board. I don't even think it's specific to our industry, but energy usage and cooling technologies and things like that, even in manufacturing or automotive or in technology and AI, have been a kind of key factor in how we get to where we want to be. So how do you guys necessarily see that kind of playing out? Because I think the big thing that we've seen on the back of sustainability, on the back of AI, and this increase in power is obviously liquid cooling, right? Yeah. And so you guys quite nicely cover a few bits. So you've got the immersion piece and the direct to liquid cooling. Yeah. Mm-hmm. How do you guys feel that moving forward the industry is going to take on those two technologies, and how do they fit within each other?
No, absolutely. Well, I appreciate that, when we were talking about the challenges for enterprises to start, adopting AI, most important thing is understanding your use case, and that's going to have an impact on the systems that you will be deploying. But once you have decided that you are going to basically deploy new IT systems in your facilities, obviously the questions that you need to address is, power consumption is going to grow up by definition. We just shared that. And how I'm going to mitigate that, I'm basically not impacting my total cost of operation. And the second one is because, all of us, we like it or not, we have sustainability goals, how we are going to make sure that solution is sustainable, that is not increasing the carbon footprint through the deployment of that technology. And last but not least, I'm going to add a new one, how also, I'm going to make sure that whatever technology that I'm installing now is going to last for long enough so I can basically have a decent payback of my investment. So the way that we are seeing to it is, we started our journey into liquid cooling like 5 years ago by first understanding that air cooling systems, even if they have evolved massively, they have like a technical limitation. So there is a point where dissipating the heat from the server, especially from the hottest part of the server, becomes very challenging just using air, and therefore liquid can have a much better role dissipating that heat. So we were liquid cooling agnostic from a technology point of view, and we developed solutions for both single-phase immersion, single-phase direct-to-chip, and we are also developing a new solution for two-phase. Two-phase is a technology that already exists. However, one of the main challenges is that the existing fluids, they are PFAS, also well known as chemical forever. So what we did is going through a STEM research and development of a new fluid, which is basically providing all the benefits of a two-phase solution, but, with a non-PFAS chemistry. So having said that, we are also in the journey of deploying many installations worldwide, small, medium, and large one, with hyperscalers, enterprises, colo data centers. And the first thing that we have learned is that you need to make sure that beside the liquid solution that you are selecting for your systems, you need to get also service and maintenance just to make sure that operations are going to run smoothly. And, how we do that is through partnerships. So we partner with companies just to make sure that we are providing the best service as we can. So this is just to grab the conversation about liquid cooling. But, we are here trying to sort out any potential question that you may have during the day.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting when we speak to kind of customers and they've seen the fast uptake on technologies and what they need. I think one of the kind of things they say is, I wish we had invested in liquid cooling 5 years ago, as you said, so that we were ready for it now. And I guess one of the challenges customers face is that off the top of it, if you're someone who's a decision maker in an organization, liquid and electricity typically are not two things you, as a human being, put together, right? And so there are these, challenges for customers with existing infrastructure. But as you said, this stuff is not about, it's a nice to have. It's fast becoming a must have. There are limitations. And so I guess kind of pushing this towards somebody who I know is going to have a solution, Supermicro and Robin. Obviously, you guys are sat in a really interesting position where you guys are building out the data center infrastructure and taking pretty much everybody's kit who's sat here today and finding new ways of deploying that and servicing it and kind of managing it. So I guess for you guys, obviously, what role do you find as Supermicro is playing in this kind of adoption and feasibility of working with AI technology, but doing it in a sustainable way with these liquids and things?
Good question, and thanks for asking me. And it also bridges nicely to the previous answer on this one. Is first of all, if we talk about sustainability AI, the best solution is not using AI. You know, sounds weird, but AI is power hungry. It's a fact. So what we can do as an IT engineering company, as I would like to call Supermicro, is first of all work with our partners to what we call a density play. Can you reduce the density from a power per square meter? The more power you can do per square meter, the more efficient you can make it. So, you know, the watts per square meter is X, and we typically call that a PUE, the power efficiency rate. So the technology that AMD brings, Intel brings, NVIDIA constantly is about that power efficiency. So the more we can squeeze on a square meter, and we can go a little bit knee high through a rack, the better it is for an environmental point of view because you're more efficient. But that's only one part of the story. The consequences of bringing more density per square meter is the temperature goes up and it becomes more power hungry on the other hand. So you need to find a solution. How do you remove that power? So that's the second part of sustainability. How can you become more efficiency? And that's why we go into liquid cooling.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, as Supermicro, we believe there's only one technology moving forward to solve this problem, and that's liquid cooling. So with air cooling for maybe some standard workloads, it's all fine. But if you're going into the AI space moving forward, if we look at the roadmaps of our vendors, liquid cooling is going to be mandatory. It's not going to be option anymore. It's going to be mandatory. So start use liquid cooling and overcome that, you know, maybe the scariness of bringing liquids and electricity together, because it's going to happen anyhow. So it's going to happen. So as Supermicro, what we did is to avoid there are any roadblocks in customers adopting that technology, we built an own liquid cooling division. So from cooling up the components all the way to pumps, all the way to chillers, we now have it as liquid cooling. So the whole ecosystem is there. And what that basically means, if you step back again a little bit from it again, is where IT, so remember the old days where IT, you had a server guy, a storage guy, and a network guy. They not always liked each other very much. Hey, but we solved that problem. There are now the IT guy. IT now entering the facility worlds. With liquid cooling, air conditioning was always the facility side of the data center. Now it becomes part of IT. So we as Supermicro are basically entering that territory with the solutions we're offering. But we have to do it because IT is not the processor anymore. It's not the server anymore. It's the whole solution. It's the whole system. And the computer nowadays you sell in the AI space is not a server. It's a complete rack. It's a supercomputer. And it has liquid cooling. It gets connected to the chiller outside. And that's a role we try to fulfill as Supermicro.
That's perfect.
May I add to that as well? Because one thing that at NVIDIA we've been very successful, we've really partnered with Supermicro actually to do this as well, is around defined reference architectures. Exactly to that point, whether it's liquid or air, one of the key parts on this is the most efficient architectures that you can have for your compute environment. And liquid has huge benefit, but equally as well, there are significant benefits as well in optimizing network around that. Because network optimization for AI is a really key area. We have new technologies, for instance, like Spectrum X, which are 1.5 times plus network throughput efficiency. And you think about the volumes of data you're moving around your network, you need network architectures that support the requirement of the compute architectures that you're deploying. Okay, and these we build into these reference architectures. Also, as well, there are other tools and services we build in. We have technology called Bluefield, which builds into our Grace Hopper architectures and our reference architectures that we partner with. And that's orientated around how do we reduce workload from the compute platform for more task-orientated activity, freeing up capacity for your AI workloads. And we can deliver 30% efficiency gains through pieces like that. So liquid, the architectures that we have are key, but I completely agree. It's a holistic view. Yep. And the network architecture as well is increasingly really important for organizations to consider having an optimized whole environment. And from our perspective, the partnerships that we have with Supermicro, that's where our reference architectures really come in and add huge value for you as organizations.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We've worked with a lot of organizations who before say one of their biggest challenges, I guess one of the biggest one is when looking at multi-user environments is if you're not the person who's managing that IT infrastructure, you're not too bothered about being particularly efficient with the resources that you use. And back in the day when those resources were, pretty off the shelf, very commoditized, fine. But when you're looking at very specific, very powerful technologies, if you're not going to be efficient with them, that's probably the first battle to get over. And then, of course, on top of it, it's kind of like trying to shove a Boeing engine into a Fiat Punto. If you haven't upgraded everything else, great, you can run in a straight line super fast, but when it comes to turning around a corner, you're going to go straight through the barriers. It's that whole solution. I think more so than ever, we as Boston have noticed that we always used to talk about the solution being, as Robin said, storage, networking, compute. That was kind of what we viewed as a solution. And then it's like software on top. And then it also now becomes cooling, and then you add in the management of it, as we talked about, and how do you put that into your infrastructure? And it does move across huge areas of your ecosystem, and you have to have multiple partners putting in here. And again, as you said, if the IT team isn't down with managing it, then you're in a bit of a strange spot when it comes to liquid. So I think I gave that example about the car, and I think a lot of it, I guess, is about balance in some ways, and about moving everything at the right pace rather than thrusting forwards to try and get one piece of the puzzle out in front, because then you leave everything else. It's that classic term that, a bottleneck. If anyone's designed a server architecture with CPU or memory and GPUs and networking, you don't often want a bottleneck, because essentially the weakest link is the point here, right? And so balance is quite key. So James, I know that you kind of briefly actually spoke a little bit about that kind of looking at performance and looking at sustainability and trying to have those things, I guess, kind of match up, which in and of themselves, is obviously a bit of a hard task. But how do you think, you as AMD, I guess, are helping to kind of balance that performance and sustainability to ideas which, as Robin said, kind of are complete opposite to each other?
No, and that's a fair point. So, and that's the challenge, right? The challenge is to design architectures that are, getting the best raw performance and the raw efficiencies that we can get out of our products, out of our processors. We want organizations to use our devices to get the maximum throughput they can get, but using less servers, helping the sustainability. Now, obviously, that's not easy. But there's also trade-offs. We know that we have one of our capabilities. I'll say it's industry leading. I'm sure everyone will say at some point today their technologies are industry leading. We've got FP64. So if those don't know, so floating point 64, 64-bit. Because precision is important. People are going to be using these devices, whether it's for, scientific research, it might be for climate, and you need the precision just as much as you need the speed, and you need the efficiency. So if we can balance all of those things within the devices, then actually you don't need multiple infrastructures to do different things. You can use whether it's your EPIC CPUs or your Instinct GPUs from AMD. You can merge all of those convergences, which was all merging, what's required.
Yeah, so I think, we've oftentimes maybe forget that, if we have an oil and gas company, yes, they're doing AI, but they're also doing their standard research in oil and gas as well. And, those are both two very compute-intensive requirements. And does that those requirements, are they so separate that the technology needs to be that vastly different? Is there a way of having, a homogenized architecture that, allows for more efficiency when you look at the overall infrastructure of the customer, which is, I think, really interesting and, obviously something where we as Boston have kind of seen very interestingly these kind of weird and wonderful technologies and use cases sprout up from nothing, and to have those conversations about, okay, well, yes, we're plowing down this AI field and we see that this is what you want to do. Actually, funnily enough, you've just talked to us about wanting to be efficient, wanting to be sustainable, wanting this to add value to your business. Why is that only something you're talking about in the very, very small piece of the AI? Why is not a conversation in your research and development or your manufacturing, with AI, but also irrespective of that, there's still parts of those that, AI can't necessarily fix or, is only an enhancement to rather than a replacement. And I think that brings me kind of nicely on to kind of advancements in AI, I guess, outside of, what we would view as the big thing that everyone talks about, which is training, right? Which is all about creating that intelligence, but it's not necessarily the use of that intelligence, right? That's far more in the inference and making the algorithms, more efficient, and see you as a human can actually kind of see what's happening within that inference model. So I guess to Intel, what do you guys think is the kind of biggest opportunity, I guess, for inference and having that performance and efficiency balance in an area that might not necessarily be in the data center where you have access to all of these cooling technologies or power technologies?
Yeah, I think it's, as I said before, about that democratization of access to compute and platforms to run those inference workloads at scale. So, if you look at sort of edge systems and like the systems you see around here today, with the Xeon 6 processor, those have acceleration built into the instruction set. So it's a native part of the instruction set to accelerate workloads for AI, and also some of those reused for other computation like codecs and other things. So you have the AVX 512 and AMX instructions, which are matrix instructions that inherently in your instruction set are making your processors more efficient. So many of the points James was saying before as well, at running these workloads. And if you can do those in standard PC platforms, you can do those in smaller form factors, and if they're meeting your KPIs, potentially more power efficient ways. So I think it's that democratization of access and then providing the scalability. And as I sort of mentioned briefly earlier, we scale that right down. So if you're an enterprise, we bring that AI to people's personal devices as well. You'll see things like Microsoft Copilot, of course, in your organization. We're also preparing the core processors with NP neural processing units and the GPUs with instructions in and the CPUs with instructions in, so that for the right, different workloads have different places they need to sit, but if they sit on those more embedded or edge devices like laptops or embedded PCs, then we have that compute that we provide that democratization of compute there as well.
Yeah, I guess it's that kind of thing as don't get a horse to drag a backpack.
Right.
You've got to use the right technology. And I think, inference and those edge devices is definitely where probably we as individual users outside of our respective fields are probably going to interact with AI, or at least see that we're interacting with AI. On the business side of things, where it might not be something where we notice that AI has been involved with, whether that's in the back end of shipping, that's potentially where, the training and then the back-end inference is going to be. So I guess again, I think the big thing today, the key word is balance, and making sure that we're looking at all of these areas simultaneously, picking the right places. As we had mentioned before, it's picking those use cases that are right, and if there is something, in an edge device that's off the shelf that, can be transformative in a way that shows clear value and is quick and is easy, what a great kind of initial win for an organization if you are part of the team who is pushing internally within your infrastructure and your company to get an AI initiative moving. Those could be some quite easy wins. The value is not going to be in the multi-billions, but if you can make your salespeople's lives easier, or you can make the shipping times of certain things go down by 10% because you're using this kind of off-the-shelf item that's already done, that's very low investment. Yes, it might not be a huge outcome, but it's definitely a positive outcome. The savings are going to be much more than the investment, but it's a good kind of, I guess, first step into moving and learning. You know, when you go to learn an instrument, you know, you'd be pretty scared if in your first lesson they open the doors and it's the Royal Albert Hall and they're asking you to play a symphony on your trumpet in front of 1,000 people, right? You're going to want to take those small steps to get there, and I think, you know, find the wins, find the losses, and if you can do that in a more, I guess, vacuum, that means that if there are failures, it doesn't mean a complete downfall for you in your projects that you're working on. That's great. And then I think on to the next, if I got my sheet here to double check I've got it right. So I think, yeah, when we look at the enterprises as well, I think, you know, we have always been a little bit focused previously in the last little while about enabling infrastructure and enabling advancements for the people who are very, very familiar with AI technologies or GPUs in general, right? But actually, you know, this is quite a new technology, just as like, you know, GPUs and utilizing powerful compute performance hasn't maybe been something that enterprises traditionally have had challenges facing. So they're coming into it kind of new. So I guess yourself, Richard, from NVIDIA, I mean, what do you think the real kind of biggest advancements for like traditional enterprises are going to help them overcome those kind of new challenges that they maybe haven't seen, and new issues like efficiency that they've never had to worry about before? What are the sort of the kind of key things that you guys think are, you know, coming out right now or in the last couple of years that are going to kind of help them to overcome that?
So I think actually, to take it back actually to the tool part, I think that fundamentally, from NVIDIA's perspective, everything we do from GPU is about accelerating computing. We've talked here about new AI platforms, etc. I think you touched upon it a little bit. There's a great benefit as well for accelerating systems that that you're already using within your businesses today. And so to your point there, one of the big developments has been the wealth and propensity of pre-accelerated certified workloads and SDKs that I mentioned earlier on you can use and your developers can use and they can customize. And the tools that are now built, the really mature and developed and supported tools that we've built around those solutions, so they can, for instance, curate your data effectively using tools like our NeMo models, build LLMs, visual chatbots, etc. Again, all of these tool sets are there. They're available. They're available at scale for many different workloads and many different industries as well. We have literally hundreds of these available to download. And the key part as well is you can run them in differing environments. You can run them from a desk, you can run them in cloud. They're portable. You can run them in your DC as well. So one of the big aspects, I'd say, is the flexibility and the power that's now available for your development teams to harness and utilize. And goes back to that point I made earlier on. They can focus around their customization above that and building on that themselves, okay, and developing that piece, okay. I'd say one of the other core parts around that as well is the level of granularity of control now that we have on these systems. So we're able to manage workloads and power usage profiles at really granular levels across your environment. So again, goes back to the point earlier on. Lots of organizations, many of you here today, you may have GPU environments of many different types of GPU as you've acquired them through time, okay? Does it not make sense? You manage that environment as one single environment. You allocate resource in that environment based upon the preferential GPU profile for the workload you're trying to use. It's not about more, it's about using what you have more intelligently. And so to the point there, these developments in technologies that we have, for instance, for any of you, take this away, our NGC catalog, just Google search it. A wide repository of workloads, accelerated SDKs. You can download those. Your users can test them. We have platforms such as our Run AI platform, which enables you this granular level of management. Wasn't available 3 years ago to manage these environments. Now you've got huge granular control over these environments. that you can deploy. And then the other part that I touched upon was around the support part, because going back to all of that is the point that you're building out these environments to deliver solutions at scale that are going to run your business and complement your businesses. And we have mechanisms to support and fully support customers around that. So all of those mechanisms are there. As we look at agentic AI and new AI technologies in your business, they offer huge opportunity, but don't lose sight as well that where one of your most immediate means may be for accelerating applications you're using today. I'll give you one example. We work with a French finance company called Muric. They process 60,000 applications a day on a financial risk management service. We increased the efficiency of it fourfold, and its power consumption decreased fourfold. Its efficiency increased sevenfold just by optimizing it on a GPU-based workload. What does that enable them to do? It enables now to develop new AI solutions, but their efficiency footprint is the same. Mm-hmm. So that's how they're able to deliver that within your organization. So huge gains from that perspective.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting you talk about that kind of heterogeneous architecture. And if you've got existing infrastructure or you've got different infrastructure, you can use that, in a way that's very, very efficient. Yeah, don't reinvent the wheel. And if you've got these tools available to you, I think one of the things I talked about at AI Summit was something like 70 to 80% of all AI projects don't necessarily leave the lab. And, people might be spending a huge amount of time to get those technologies into the lab. Whereas if you've got something that's already lab ready, you kind of take out a huge amount of that back end work and that investment. And that's the key. That's what AI is here to do, right? In any organization, any infrastructure, any technology is there. Essentially, it's all about the money. It is about making your system more efficient so that you can do more, so that you can earn more. And if you can reduce the cost, reduce the time to deliver that, it means that you very, very quickly get that ROI back. So you're not having to sit there and go, okay, well, it's going to take us 3.5 years to get that investment back. Likely, we're probably not going to be able to ask for any more money to invest in the future until that ROI has been proven. If we can shorten that time frame by using off-the-shelf tools, using these efficient technologies, then what that means is that our ROI time is shorter, and therefore we can invest more into the AI and we can push further with it. And as I think somebody said, a part of that is going to be about pushing out the competition, because that is what they're doing. If you are not necessarily being able to bring something unique to your customers, or to bring something more efficiently to your customers, or bring something that's more cost effective to your customers or more personalized to your customers, what are you bringing to your customers, right? And so I think AI will allow you to do that. And that kind of, I guess, brings me on to my final question, which is quite interesting, which is, I guess that's part of the business strategy. And often I think people can forget that, as I think we talked about. I guess a question to you, Goran, is how do you think these enterprises should go about initially engaging on how do I start an AI? What should their strategy potentially look like? What might be some of the first steps they could take?
Thanks. Yesterday I was talking with Miller from Boston Limited, and the principle is the same as in your company. We are trying to make optimal strategy for a company, not to stretch it and not to over-engineer anything, because this is the road to hell if we are doing this. You mentioned this ROI, return on investment. Statistically, there is just 5% of AI project which shows return on investment, basically. And before I answer your question, just I want to comment on few things, because this panel is too short for what we have to say and then to share with the colleagues. First thing, this water cooling, this is the best thing ever, and this is the future. As you said, AI without water cooling, it is not, I don't see it as possible. Second thing is, when you said we have two possibilities, cloud solutions and this on-premise solutions, we are in the trend of deglobalization. That means that we are not rely anymore based on what is happening in USA and in China and everything. We should rely on our internal resources. And then for long years, I was the guy who was only cloud first. Now I'm a little bit concerned about it. And we had these new functions, cloud economist, and it was functioning like, okay, we should somehow find a way how to calculate the cloud costs with AI in cloud. We don't have this anymore, because I talked with my AI lab team last week, and one of those guys said, we have this agentic architecture, and if it is on-prem, we know how much it costs, but if it is in cloud, we cannot estimate it, because we don't know how agents are calling and then how they interfere one with each other. And with this in mind, we are creating the strategies with this, as I said before, vertical integration solutions. So we are starting as Exacta from the strategy, and then provide the solution and also the AI solution, hardware, software, plus the company strategy. Without this, we will be just another big four advisory company, which is just selling you the stories.
Josh, can I call out something important here?
Of course.
So if you look at AI, it's basically what fueled the fourth industrial revolution that we're now in. It was at the starting point. If you look at the previous three industrial revolutions, they all had a source, something that fueled that revolution. Steam, power, electricity, coals, whatever. The one that does it for AI, and a lot of people tend to forget about it, is data, information. Without data, without information, there's nothing to do in AI, because you have to start learning and training the system. So to answer your question, where do you start? It starts with assessing your data. What do you have as a company? If you don't have your own data, your own intellectual property, customer information, your logistics systems or whatever, there's nothing much to train on from doing AI in your company. And if you come to the conclusion your data is good enough to do something on AI, how do you open up that data to load it into an AI environment, to get it trained, and then finally get some inferencing output to it? So to me, it all starts with storage. And we typically forget about it. We talk about the compute element, the power, the flagship product. But let's not underestimate the importance of storage and the data analytics that comes with it.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, because a lot, obviously we've done a lot with data prior to AI, right? So if your first step is to get your data right, to get your storage right, even if you don't necessarily find a use case that you can within AI, that's still a positive step towards potentially other areas, where we maybe move away from AI in terms of deep learning and look at kind of machine learning and things like that.
Yeah, but data management takes you 90% of your time to prepare everything, as you said, and this is the biggest chunk. And then in all my projects that I work on, the data is the thing where we are breaking or winning. Yep. So this is the crucial point. With good data, AI is just the tool.
And you're right, Josh. We did storage consolidation, put everything into a SAN so that it was easy accessible. We did the big data as a starting point, but AI data is a different animal and requires a different kind of view.
Yeah, so it's about getting yourself set up. I guess laying a stable foundation, and
Correct.
Data is the stable foundation. If you start to move ahead too far, and that foundation is not solid, obviously everything's going to come collapsing down. And I think we have seen it in that. Some organizations will maybe have gone about this the wrong way and found that they failed. And typically what that can do is it can cause a bit of an effect of either it goes one of two ways, one of which is the sunken fallacy cost. So they will literally just go and stop, as you said, pouring more and more stuff, more and more resources into something that has that failed base. Or they'll use that failed base as essentially a blueprint moving forwards to say, oh, well, we tried it once, we're not going to try again. And I think, for companies that kind of sets ourselves a little bit further back. So I think we've covered quite a lot. I know it's a lot to take in, and we will have some time after this. I will tell you what our schedule sounds like, but there's definitely time for us all to have and continue these conversations, individually or as a group, as we kind of move forward. So essentially we're going to have some refreshments in a minute in the foyer for 5-10 minutes, and then we're going to come back, right? And then we will have a quick little pitch from each of our vendors. So just thank you guys. Really, really interesting. Really, really good. I think it's got us potentially some talking points for later on, and really appreciate all the views that you guys have. And I think you've complemented each other really well, and we've kind of got this huge holistic view now of this. It's obviously just the start. I don't expect anyone to walk away as an AI expert, but hopefully with this, it's a good way of kind of understanding where we start, how we do, and what the challenges are. So thank you very much, guys, and thank you all for listening. And
See you.
grab some refreshments.